Hello and welcome to Crypto Interviews. My name is Claudio and this is Pulsechain, the channel that brings you crypto news, reviews, tutorials, and interviews. And joining me today is Brandon from A Million to the Moon or to the Moon. How do you say
it? A Million or the Moon.
Or A Million or the Moon. Okay, that's his YouTube channel. I was actually invited to their channel. Brandon and his guest have actually been very kind and invited me over to talk about Polkadot and Kusama, but this was a number of months ago. And so if you want to check that video out, I will be posting a link right at the end of this video. So first of all, make sure to watch this video. But I've actually asked Brandon to join this channel and talk about his journey, like his crypto journey, how he started, and kind of talk about the beginner investments, right? Not that it's financial advice, but just more about what are new people looking for and what new people should look at when it comes to investing in crypto for the first time, because it's nice to get someone else's point of view. So Brandon, welcome. Thank you very much for coming on. And yeah, if you just want to basically introduce yourself for the people that don't know who you are.
Sure. Yeah. Well, number one, man, thanks for having me on the channel. It's good to talk to you again. It's been quite a minute. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Brandon. I'm the co-founder of A Million to the Moon. I used to be a construction worker building wind turbines, and I also spent a couple years in Canada's Army Reserves as well. And so ever since then, I've been kind of on a mission to seek financial freedom. And so, with me and my friend, my partner on here at A Million to the Moon, we've been trying to find all these different routes, from actively day trading to more fundamental long-term investing. We've pretty much done it all sorts of yield farming, DeFi projects, NFTs. We've kind of dipped our toes in pretty much every single niche there is in crypto. And so I think there's a lot of important lessons learned to be shared. Well, again, now this is financial advice, and hopefully some lessons that can be applied in the near future that will hopefully benefit me and other people as well.
No, absolutely. Absolutely. And if you could tell us, like, when you first got started in crypto, I mean, what did you look at the beginning? Did you start watching YouTube channels, or what was your main point of reference when you're researching crypto project? Did you just go to CoinMarketCap, or how did you even hear about all of this?
Oh, right? God, no, I remember extremely specifically who it was that got me in crypto. It's this crypto YouTuber. I don't know if I should mention him, because it wasn't just him. It was a basket of people. But look, man, the case, like, this is the case. I've been someone who's been a working class, middle class person all my life, who realized very early on that if I don't do something dramatic to improve my financial standing in life, that I will forever be essentially a financial slave. Like, that's honestly how I view myself. If I don't do something to make an income, I will be a homeless person. And so I don't want to be in that case forever. And so for many years, I've been conscientious of having to take actions to learn how to deal with finances and hopefully become financially independent. So it all really started off when I was a teenager. I used to get into stocks. I remember I bought my first stock, Microsoft, at $32. Wow. And the interesting thing was, I think that was, I could be wrong, but it was 2015, 2014. It was definitely before the last Bitcoin bull cycle. And I bring that up because it's funny to compare what the ROI would have been from Microsoft at $32 if I would have just put that money in Bitcoin. I think I put in like $300-400. I sold all my toys. I had a garage sale, sold all my toys. I was like an early teenager or something. And needless to say, Bitcoin outperformed Microsoft by quite a lot, even though Microsoft did extremely well. I believe Microsoft is a couple $100 right now. But that speaks to the fact that really, if you want financial freedom, you really got to be able to compound whatever assets you have quickly. And the world is slowly coming to learn that cryptocurrency is the place to do it. It is the fastest growing asset class in the world. And so this is where it makes sense to be to pay attention. And to kind of come back to your question, it started off with me and Messi. We actually used to work together on a wind farm. And eventually we started talking technical analysis. Eventually we first started off with trading. So I used to mess around with the stock market. Me and Messin really got heavily into the technical analysis side of things. We spent months studying, taking different courses. We were very actively trading, day trading for quite a while with mixed success. Had a lot of gains, had a lot of losses as well.
Yeah.
So I mostly started off with the trading side of things, and then slowly but surely, I started learning a little bit more about DeFi projects, different ecosystems. And so it was a very gradual process, kind of starting off with the stock market technical analysis side of things.
Right. And once you started off with that, like, how did you decide what to invest in? Like, what did you look at? Did you look at low market caps? Did you look at the team behind the project, the backers? Like, what was your What was your criteria when you were picking these low caps, or not low caps necessarily, but projects in general?
Man, it's such a important question because it's been a massive process. You know, I started by following different influencers, you know, these new low cap gems, you know, ICOs were a big thing for a while, got into a handful of ICOs. You know, I started listening to people like Token Metrics. Token Metrics actually, you know, I made a video a while ago criticizing them, although it was very mild and it's just ideas. But you know, I give them credit because it was of them that I actually got into Matic Polygon at around 2 cents, I think, and that was my first 100x. So
Yeah.
man, I've been into everything. I've dabbled in DeFi, different ecosystems from different DeFi projects in Solana to Cardano. Not so much metaverse stuff, but basically for the last 2 years, I've learned a lot of lessons. I've had a lot of success and I've had a lot of failures. A lot of things I've learned, you know, you need to, I think, very much actively manage a portfolio in crypto, because the thing that's unique to crypto is that it moves very fast. And there are these particular niches that have market sponsorship at any one given moment that may lose market sponsorship. Like, for example, you know, if there's a lot of development happening in Polkadot, you know, Polkadot might be very, there might be a lot of attention to Polkadot for a 2-month period, but maybe the attention dies off. So there's been a lot of lessons learned, you know, paying attention to market sponsorship, the state of the cycle, following Bitcoin for macro swings in the market. But also I've learned that in order to seek financial freedom, in order to do what most don't, which is turn a little bit of money into a lot of money, you need to focus on what others aren't focusing on. Because look, man, you know, there's a lot of influencers out there like BitBoy Crypto who invest into the, you know, basically top market cap coins out there, already well-established cryptocurrencies. And that's all well, fine and good. You know, he has a team of, I don't know, 50 people over there. You know, he's managing $16 million. So look, I believe that there is a difference between how you invest a lot of money and a little bit of money, because when you have a lot of money, you're more focused on preservation. You're more focused on a more conservative approach. You know, he has a company with employees. He doesn't want to, you know, be gambling. So, you know, if you're in that kind of position, yeah, investing in Bitcoin, investing in Ethereum are fine. But Bitcoin and Ethereum, they're going to get you what? A 2x, a 5x, a 10x in the next couple of years. All these large cryptocurrency influencers understand that very well. And, you know, when new people come into the space seeking financial freedom, which is what most people do, most new retail investors and traders that come into the space seeking financial freedom, it's kind of a little disheartening on my end seeing how many large influencers shill Bitcoin, because the reality that they understand that they don't share very often is that it's simply true that at this point, Bitcoin and Ethereum are not going to bring financial freedom to the vast majority of people in the space, which is what people are here to do. And so if you're trying to find financial freedom, you got to look outside the box. You got to think outside the box. What is it out there that's interesting, that is of high quality, that's innovative, that's trying to address a large market with the ability to actually pull it off, that most people have either ignored due to ignorance, lack of exposure, a mixture of reasons. And that's where true life-changing gains lie. Like, you know, I did it with Matic Polygon. I got in when very little people talked about it. The large crypto influencers barely talked about it, if at all. And that's kind of what you got to look out for, man. You got to be in early at something of high quality at a good valuation. And we can go on, but yeah, there's essentially a set of factors that I've learned over the last couple of years that increase your likelihood of being able to outperform the market and seek financial freedom.
Yeah. And talking about Matic, I just remember now that back in the day when not many people were not talking about it, and it was, I think it was around 4 cents at the peak, and then he had a massive dump to like 1 cent in a matter of 10 minutes because apparently there was some movement from a team wallet, and so they had to demonstrate that it wasn't really a team wallet. But I don't know if they could demonstrate it in the end. I didn't follow through with the news, but yeah, there was a lot of FUD following them then for a good while until the market picked up, and then the token picked up as well. But look at it now. I mean, looking back from 1 cent from that dump, even if you would have gotten a 4 cents and you would have been stuck since then, I mean, how is it doing now? It's amazing, right?
Oh, it's like over what?
Over 100x,
right? Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Yeah. So that's one example there of why people should not only look at Bitcoin. That's okay if you want to hold a little bit of Bitcoin, right? For the long term, see it as a digital gold or whichever way you want to call it, or maybe a bit of Ethereum as well. But ultimately, if you want that financial freedom, it's these low caps that you should try and get into early. And the question is, how can you tell if it's early? Well, you look at the market cap, you look at the team, you look at the roadmap, right? That's one of the things. Or what else are you looking at when you try to analyze these things.
You could also look at, and this is something I love to do, which is if you literally go to Etherscan, it might be difficult with some other chains, but if you go to Etherscan and you look up whatever token you like, you could literally see how many wallets hold that token. And for example, there's this one low cap gem I'm into. It's called Blank Token. It's a MetaMask competitor with a privacy feature. Think of like Tor, but for MetaMask, right? Nobody holds that thing. And so it's in its beta phases. Who knows if it'll succeed? It's highly speculative. I don't even think the team is doxed. So there's a ton of risk. But the point is, there's very, very few people holding the Blank token. If you compare how many wallet holders there are to how many people are actively using something like MetaMask, well, if this thing eventually gets out there and succeeds and there's a track record of success, well, this thing will presumably start getting more and more users. And there's a direct correlation between growth of users and typically token price. Although something to note here is that something I've found is that it is also of incredible importance to consider tokenomics, because I have invested in many interesting, what many would consider good ideas, but with poor tokenomics, and so they perform very poorly. Like one example I could bring up is Armor Finance, where you can basically connect your MetaMask wallet, and it could essentially give you insurance on your different cryptocurrencies. Very interesting stuff. In fact, they would pay you in the Armor token for purchasing insurance. So very innovative, very interesting idea. You know, insurance decentralized on the blockchain, but had very poor tokenomics. It was essentially governance and highly inflationary. So it did extremely poorly, even though it was a good idea with increasing adoption. So something I learned is that, you know, there's an ever evolving set of factors where, depending on what state of the market you're in, some factors may be more important than others as to what can lead to, you know, something doing well. And among those factors are getting in early, good valuation, few users, and good tokenomics, while also taking into consideration the state of the greater market as a whole. Because depending on what niche you get into in crypto, Bitcoin, what's going on with Bitcoin and Ethereum can influence your niche. Like, for example, you know, NFTs are largely correlated. Some DeFi projects may be more correlated to what's going on with Bitcoin and Ethereum. So depending on what niche you're in, there's a different set of factors that might be more or less important, but some of those I mentioned, I think, are pretty general.
Yeah, and what do you think about the anonymous team project? So when you got, I mean, there are some which are really, really interesting, but the team is anonymous, so there is that risk. I mean, how do you see that? Do you consider that a safe investment from your personal point of view? Did you personally get into any of those, or as a risk? Or
Yeah, look, so for me, I think I have a higher risk tolerance than most, although getting into risk is such a highly nuanced conversation. Because so another thing I've learned in my several years of being in crypto is that people have a very poor understanding of risk, man, when it comes to trading, when it comes to fundamental analysis. There's so many gaps in people's knowledge that are quite ironic and funny. So anyways, that's more of a separate conversation. But I do get into some of these risky projects, but whenever I do these projects with anonymous founders, I do so with a very small allocation of my total portfolio, like 2%, 5%, something like that. Definitely anything significant, because I don't know about you, but I have experienced rug pull myself, where I invest in something that literally drops 99.99%. And so, you know, lesson learned, you know, you don't go all in on something overly speculative, right? And something like Blank, you know, with an anonymous team still in its beta phase, I do consider to be speculative. And so I would only pour a small portion of my portfolio into something like that.
yeah, no rug pull for me, thankfully, at least not yet. But I did suffer a huge loss with one anonymous project, which actually has a huge backing in terms of the community. It's just unfortunate that because of its functionality with the high APY, it caused a lot of dumping, because people are staking, people are generating a lot of staking rewards, and so there's a lot of dumping going on there. And you know, it's the endless cycle when you're thinking, oh, I know it's eventually going to go up when they're going to release something. But even if they do, the issue is that the price is dumping, new people are buying in around that price, then they're generating huge staking rewards, so they're incentivized to sell, and so those new people are selling onto the newer people who are buying in, and you know, it's that endless cycle where it keeps dumping. So it's a nightmare. But yeah, thankfully I didn't go very heavy in it, but yeah, it does hurt when that happens. And it's just lesson learned on, even though you think a project's good, just because it has a high APY, because the tokenomics are brutal, they're dumponomics basically, you know, and so it causes this kind of effect, right?
That's why tokenomics are so important, because I've done this myself countless times. I invest in a good idea. It's even gaining users. Like again, if you look at Etherscan, you see the monthly, how many people are holding it in their wallet, the numbers increasing, the volume's increasing, decent idea. You're like, okay, great. It's bound to do well eventually. But if the tokenomics aren't there, if there isn't some utility, if it's highly inflationary, if there's more working against it than for it, then good ideas can perform poorly. We see this all the time. That's why it's so difficult, and it's such a moving target, and it's so rare to find that true 100x 1000x gem. And so while it is incredibly rare, I do think that I think I've found it, or at least I think I've found the best thing that would look like the next 100x, next 1000x, in my opinion.
Right. And let's move on to that now and talk about what are your favorite projects which you think are gonna 100x, just based on your experience, based on what you've been following so far from the team and from the community.
Right. So look, I've been trying to figure out what goddamn works in crypto for years. I went from heavily day trading to more fundamental long-term investing and swing trading in different niches, and I've learned a lot of lessons in that time. And from all those lessons I've learned, I've decided to put really every last penny to my name into, like, I'm really putting my money where my mouth is here. I went all in on one particular niche, one particular ecosystem, and that is the Richard Heart, HEX, Pulsechain, and Pulse X ecosystem. I could go on to explain, what each one of those cryptocurrencies are, but I just to maybe begin explaining my rationale. Look, I think within this ecosystem exists the combination of factors necessary to outperform the market, which is number one, this ecosystem has been largely wrongly dismissed. In my subjective opinion, we can delve into what risk factors make a investment opportunity illegitimate or not. I believe, due to putting in months and months of research, that this particular niche has been wrongly assumed to be of too high risk by the majority of large influencers with a surface level understanding. And when I realized that, the trader in me got so excited, because what I realized with that understanding of the market, where the market misunderstands something of extreme high quality, that means there's opportunity there, extreme opportunity. Not just that, after further research, in my opinion, existing in this niche is extreme intrinsic high value, with the value that these tokens keep in mind with their tokenomics, how they're structured, how the core software is immutable and unchangeable, how they have built into it extremely bullish tokenomics, how early it is, how with Pulsechain and Pulse X, and arguably HEX, due to how largely it's been dismissed, I think it's at a good valuation. There's so many factors here that lead me to believe there's an extreme likelihood of this particular niche being able to outperform the greater market in crypto for at the very least the next several years to come, in my opinion.
Now, I do have one question about that. So one of the reasons why HEX has been flooded by a lot of people is because of the lack of utility, right? I mean, it's a token which is created to increase in value over time, but there's no real utility. Like Richard Hart was asked multiple times, what is the utility? And he couldn't answer that. He said, no, it's just set up to increase in value, and that's it. You just hold it and you wait for it to pump. It's got pump-mentals ultimately. That's plain and simple. But what I don't know is, because I didn't look into Pulsechain and Pulsex, is he going to change it with these two projects, or are they following a similar structure as HEX?
I think there's a much more easily digestible meme or reason as to why these particular new assets are interesting. I think Pulsechain and Pulsex, I think, are much easier pill to swallow than something like HEX. I think HEX is a little bit difficult to understand. There is some baggage, and we can delve into that. But regardless of HEX's baggage, I do think that Pulsechain and Pulsex are easier to understand and more digestible. Because look, Pulsechain, it's super easy to understand. It is a faster, cheaper fork of Ethereum that is proof of stake, that is airdropping every single Ethereum user a copy of all their ERC20s onto the Pulsechain. This is essentially the biggest marketing campaign in the world. Exactly. Yeah. So if you're holding Chainlink, if you're holding USDC, if you're holding Shiba, you will get a copy of all those coins on the Pulsechain network by doing nothing. All you have to
what's the utility of those tokens on Pulsechain?
Well, that's the thing. We don't know. So they, one USDC on Ethereum might not be worth one redeemable US dollar on Pulsechain. The market's going to figure out what exactly the rate is. So when Pulsechain goes live, it seems that there will be a 2-day period before a bridge from Pulsechain to Ethereum is built out. But after that bridge is built out and you could onboard from Ethereum to Pulsechain, you'll be able to back those PRC20 pairs with ERC20 pairs and essentially back their value that way. So essentially the market will determine what the value of these airdrop coins is. We have no idea. Chainlink on Ethereum might be $20. Chainlink on Pulsechain might be $5.
And you need to hold, what's the criteria to qualify for these airdrops? Do you need to hold some Pulse tokens or?
No, you just need to hold your ERC20s and NFTs on basically not an exchange. So if you're holding them on your MetaMask, on your Exodus, whatever, Ledger, Trezor, whatever is not an exchange, you will get free copies on the Pulsechain.
But has a snapshot been taken, or is that something that's going to happen at some point in time?
So Richard has been very iffy as to when exactly a snapshot or the fork date will happen. The fork date has not happened as of yet. He has made some rumblings that he would give people somewhat of a heads up, but there's an open question as to how much that heads up will be, because he doesn't want people gaming the system ahead of time, removing liquidity, that kind of thing. So he kind of wants to give people the least amount of heads up. So from my understanding, they're currently just working on finishing up the sacrifice totals because there was basically a raise phase. And so once that's done, Richard Hart said could be 2 weeks after that before mainnet launches. So Pulsechain could basically be coming out within a month, although he's been saying kind of 4 more weeks for the past 6 months. So, that 1 month might actually end up being 2 or 3 months. But definitely the snapshot is likely to be anywhere after 2 weeks from now.
Right. Okay, that's interesting. So I wonder, what's the Pulse token? Is there going to be a Pulse token as well?
Yes. So the Pulse chain token is called Pulse, PLS is the ticker. Yeah. And the total supply was determined by basically the sacrifice phase, where people could send basically Richard Hart. He didn't say Richard Hart, similar, they had like an origin address kind of thing, but it's Richard Hart. They sent, Ethereum, USDC, Chainlink. There was basically a long list of USD20s and some Binance Smart Chain coins. I think there was a few other chains as well. And I think they ended up raising, what was it, like $1 billion before the origin address came in, and then sacrificed like $18 billion worth of X. Wow. But between the Pulsechain and PulseX sacrifice phase, regardless of Richard Hart, regardless of the origin address, I believe there was roughly $2 billion raised of non-Richard Hart money, non-Richard Hart crypto. Which
you could see that they were from different wallets coming in.
Oh yeah, unique people. Nothing tied to the origin address, the sister address. Right. Richard Hart, the origin address, it's Richard Hart or the team, whatever. Came in and sacked at the very end. It sacked like $18 billion worth of X for PulseX, and I think something similar for Pulsechain as well. But during the beginning raise, it was just normal people such as myself getting in and getting an allocation, and the max supply was determined from that sacrifice phase. So both Pulsechain and PulseX will be deflationary from the start. So very bullish tokenomics. Although the thing that's, I think, very interesting to bring up here is that PulseX is arguably slightly more bullish in its tokenomics than Pulsechain, because PulseX uniquely has this buy and burn feature, where a portion of all the fees accrued on the PulseX DEX will be taken to first buy PulseX on the open market and then burn it. So it's not simply a burn, it's first a buy and burn, compounding the supply removal effect and adding pretty much 24/7 buy pressure on the open market. Now it's an open question as to how often that sell button will be that buy and burn function will be taken. It's actually a public function. You can anyone can do it. So literally, I like, people will just be sitting in front of the screen going buy, burn, buy, burn, buy, burn. It's a public function. And so from some of the estimates I've heard, if Pulse X ends up getting some comparable volume to something like PancakeSwap, there could be anywhere from buy and burn dollar value in the high hundreds of thousands to millions on a daily basis once PulseX hits comparable volume to something like PancakeSwap.
Wow.
Yeah, extremely bullish token.
Yeah, and I mean, Richard has Richard has a very good way to market himself as well. I mean, he's been on many people's channels as well, talking about it, promoting, and this was about Hex as well, but I think he's doing the same with Pulse now. And so I mean, what attracted you to Hex to begin with? Like, what was it that attracted you? Did you get in early though, or did you get in like late when the price already went up?
Oh, I got in late because I got a very funny Hex story. And this is one of my biggest regrets in crypto. Look, I like to think I made a lot of mistakes in crypto. I've made a lot of money. I've lost a lot of money, and I try and learn from my mistakes. And so I actually heard about Hex the first couple months it was out. It was roughly 2.5 some odd years ago, something like that, where Richard Hart was on a Token Metrics live stream. And the Token Metrics guys, they were asking him about Hex, and I remember I trusted these Token Metrics guys. They were saying, think of Hex as a trade, not as an investment. Oh, this is extremely high risk. Oh, we wouldn't invest in this ourselves, that kind of thing. They were very much downplaying it. And look, while guys like them, they're technical and fundamental analysts. Their job is to think about risk. And so I don't fault them whatsoever for thinking about risk, for expressing risk. Part of their job is to help people avoid scams. Part of their job is to help people understand and avoid risk. So no fault to them in that respect. But I do believe the Token Metrics guys, among many other people, have, I think, failed to understand exactly what set of risk factors make something illegitimate or not. Where I could, I think, very easily agree that Hex perhaps arguably has some high risk factors. Like, for example, basically for Hex to continue to work and function, Richard Hart needs to be a rational actor. Like, if Richard Hart loses his mind, he could just market sell the vast majority of Hex supply, and Hex would just dump 99%. Yeah. But if you just don't, if you're okay with assuming that Richard Hart just won't lose his mind, and that he wants to protect the thing he's built his life, he's dedicated his life to building, as is rational. As long as you think Richard will continue to act as a rational actor, then I think Hex is, I think, capable of continuing to perform as intended, and it was its design intention to appreciate in price. And so I don't want to get too far away from my original point here. What was my original point?
Yeah, no, it's just what attracted you to it. And so, yeah, you just explained.
Yeah. So I first heard about yeah, so I heard about it 2 years ago. I dismissed Hex because they were like, okay, these guys are saying, they're not going to invest in it. Think of it as a trade. It was like, they're clearly saying like, yeah, guys, like, don't get into this. And so I ignored it. And then it wasn't until this last August, that I started, I don't know, I must have seen it on Twitter. I started like charting it. I was like, I might as well take a look at the chart. And I was like, holy shit, this thing's grown like thousands of times in X. This thing has grown immensely ever since I heard about it 2 years ago. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, what's going on here? So I started looking into it. And I remember being massively dismissive towards Hex. I thought it was a scam at first, until I did the research. I actually looked into not the white paper, because it doesn't have a white paper, but one of the developers made something akin to a white paper where it explains all the Hex tokenomics and how it works. I reached out to a lot of the Hex influencers to speak about the tokenomics. And so, look, don't get me wrong. There's baggage with Hex. There's a nuanced conversation as to how it was marketed. And there are some risk factors like with Hex. Like, I'm not one of these guys that think there's no risk whatsoever. I just think the risk is tolerable given the pros. Like, there's a pro side and there's a con side. And after listing all the pros and cons, I think that Hex is ultimately a legitimate misunderstood investment with arguably some risk factors that are fine, but I don't think it's illegitimate. Like, one of the biggest arguments against Hex is that it's quite illiquid, which is very true. That's one of the reasons why it did a 10,000x in less than 2 years on the chart. From all-time low to all-time high, it actually goddamn did it, like Richard said it would. And one of the reasons is that it's very illiquid. So if a few whales sell all at once, the price of Hex could dump dramatically. Yeah. Just as if a few whales buy all at once, the price could pump very dramatically. But just because something is illiquid makes it perhaps higher risk doesn't mean it's illegitimate. I find it so funny that every single influencer who knocks Hex for being illiquid will go and they'll shill NFTs. NFTs are the most illiquid market ever. Very true. Yeah. If one or two whales decide to dump their NFTs, it could drop the price by half, the floor price by half, by a quarter. NFTs are extremely illiquid. And so, well, it depends on the NFTs, because there are some that can only be sold on a marketplace. And so even if they start dumping them, I mean, they could, you need to get people to actually buy them at those prices as well. So I guess it depends. Yes, of course. But the point is, there's no order book. It's a very illiquid market. So I just find it ironic and funny how in one breath, the same influencer will criticize Hex for being highly illiquid, but in the same breath, we'll talk about investing and promote an NFT project that's highly illiquid. So this is one example of how people, I think, dramatically, ironically misunderstand risk, where they'll say, oh, this is illiquid, therefore it's illegitimate. But I'm gonna go promote this thing that's massively illiquid and illegitimate. And there's massive whales in plenty of ERC20s. And so if one or two of those whales sell, it'll crash the price. Just like if one or two whales in HEX sell, it'll crash the price. It is, perhaps high risk. It is illiquid, but is there anything a part of HEX that makes it a scam, illegitimate, fundamentally flawed, anything that doesn't give it long-term staying potential? I don't think there is.
My only concern with it is with regards to the SEC and seeing securities, security tokens being treated differently, and HEX is not a utility, and so it would be classified as a security, I guess. I don't know exactly the legal term behind it or how it would be classified, but I'm just assuming because it's not a utility, then you would go into the other section. And so are you not worried about Richard Hart eventually having problems with the SEC?
Well, this was a very, very big issue when HEX first launched. This is one of the major issues. And so one of the first things, actually the very first interview that Richard Hart gave when HEX went live day one was this 4 or 5 hour long interview with 2 or 3 lawyers and one pseudo lawyer, I think Tone Vase.
Yeah, I remember that one.
I watched the entire thing.
Yeah.
And it was all about whether or not HEX is a security or not. And so again, I'm gonna try my best to like summarizing a 5 hour conversation that they had there. But look, ultimately, HEX was built, and a lot of the ambiguity behind the origin address, and a lot of this, and a lot of the way HEX is communicated, a lot of language behind HEX is ultimately structured to attempt to avoid being labeled a security. And so Richard has taken steps to try and make HEX not being labeled security. But if some regulator, some politician wants to come after HEX, there's nothing you can do to stop it. If the regulators want to come after XRP, there's nothing they can do to stop it. The tokenomics are in the smart contract and they're immutable. Something I love about HEX, immutability, which is something that many DeFi projects lack, where their tokenomics or intrinsic tokenomics or supply, that kind of thing, inflation is not immutable. It can be changed on a whim. There is admin keys all throughout much of crypto, which does not exist in HEX. Like, again, man, there are risk factors with HEX, but there's so much good to like: the immutability, how it's designed to go up, and how I think the intrinsic game theory is sound. And I think as long as you don't have, HEX being, persona non grata with the SEC, as long as Richard continues to be a rational actor, as long as whales continue to be rational actors, which is incentivized in the tokenomics, then I think HEX can continue to work fine. Although, again, look, nothing you could do in XRP's case. If the SEC comes after HEX, then I guess there can and maybe will be some problems. But ultimately, what are they going to do? HEX is in the ERC20. Are you going to shut down Ethereum? Are you going to break in my door and steal my seed phrase to MetaMask?
They need to disable the smart contract functionality, and it's how are you going to get access?
Good luck.
To that?
Go shut down Ethereum. And by the way, where is HEX listed? Uniswap, decentralized exchanges. HEX is on no centralized exchange. Okay, so let's say the SEC starts to go after HEX. Okay, great. What are they going to do? Take it off exchanges? It's not on exchanges. Shut down the code? It's an ERC20. It's on Ethereum. What are you going to do? Shut down Ethereum?
Yeah. I see what you mean. No, I mean, that's definitely good, and it does protect it in a way. And we'll have to see how things go because every big payday there is a bit of a dump. We know that happens, I think, once a year, right? If I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly. I remember doing a tutorial on HEX ages ago where I showed how you can stake and unstake through their dashboard. And
you got it earlier than me, man.
Yeah. I actually received the bag from Richard Hart himself, believe it or not. He actually DM'd me. He was. We were part of this crypto content creator group, and he was also in it. And he DM'd me. And no, he actually asked everyone in the group who's interested in some tokens. And so BitBoy Crypto was also in it at the time. He also said, "Yeah, sure, I am." I also said, "I am." And so he DM'd each one of us. He created a wallet for us, and he said, "Look, I'm giving you this wallet with this much HEX. You can do what you want." And a part of that was staked. And so I showed in a tutorial how you can unstake it. Because I honestly didn't believe in it at the time, but I thought, okay, let me try it out and see how things go, right? And everyone was talking about it being a scam and this and that, and I ended up selling very, very cheap. And then the price took off like a year later, and I was like, oh my God, why didn't I just keep it? I got it for free. I could have just kept it. And so there was a lot of regret there. And I guess that if I would have kept it, and if I would have really changed, because that would have changed my life if I would have kept it, I mean, I would have probably done a lot of hex videos. Let's just be serious here, right? I mean, if you're making a lot of money from something which you got for free, of course you're going to be, you know, promoting it in a way, right? Even if it's not necessarily like the best thing out there, right? There are many projects that are doing great things, but just because you've made so much money, you are likely going to promote it as well, right? So
if you make money something, regardless of what it is, you're going to promote it. You're going to, yeah.
And so, yeah, this is it's been interesting how you explained everything and the whole journey on this. But I do have one final question, Brandon, and that's what is one thing in life that you truly desire?
Financial freedom, man. I don't want to be a slave.
But I thought you got to that already.
No, not yet. I have
not yet.
I have no liquid assets. I put every last penny to my name into HEX. So my HEX is, by the way, 100% staked out. I have an average stake length of 10.5 years. And then everything else I put into the Pulsechain and Pulsechain sacrifice phase, which aren't live yet. So I put all my liquid assets, everything I've done for the past 2 years, into HEX, Pulsechain, and PulseX. And I have nothing liquid. So until this stuff comes out, I have no liquid assets whatsoever.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
Huge risk. I hope it works out for you. I mean, it's going to be a big one, but it could pay off. That's the important thing, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, thank you very much for coming on. I appreciate it. And I hope to have you again. We'll talk about other topics in the future. And yeah, thank you for watching. And by the way, if you want to subscribe to Brandon's channel, you can find the link both in the pinned comment and in the description of this video. Thank you for watching and take care. Bye-bye.